like that transition. It's very
Yeah.
easy, and I don't have to worry about it. I was wondering. I was just sitting here. I'm like, oh, do I have to click something? Do I have to do something to end the video? But no, it just ends on its own.
Yeah. It's the
Technology is great.
beauty of Restream.
Yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by Restream. No, I'm kidding.
Well, it literally is brought to you by Restream. So
Yes.
yeah, but that's not a sponsored thing.
No.
Unless Restream does want to give us free stuff for
Yeah.
any reason, and I don't know. Either way, welcome to Less Than 3 NPC, a little showcast podcast talk show where three friends talk about stuff that is a bit too complex or in depth for chatting when we play video games. For those that don't know, this is a bit of a spin-off from a little show that Kara and I run called 2NPC. And during various video game adventures, as we were discussing certain topics, it kind of got thrown around that maybe we could have a little talk show where we tackle various topics that like I said are a bit too complex for chatting while we play video games, and it spawned into Less Than 3 NPC. I'll introduce myself and then pass the mic over to the other two wonderful humans that are joining us tonight that are a part of this show. My name is Joe. I use they, them pronouns, non-binary. I'm a video game enjoyer, mental illness haver, big Destiny fan, big Genshin Impact fan. I am currently a lifeguard at a local pool,
Yes.
which is a recent development. I spent the better part of the last decade in the sexual violence sector as an educator and frontline worker. But through various things, life decided career change was in order. And that's a little about me. I'm going to throw it to Kara next. Just for fun.
Thanks. My name's Kara, she, her. I am someone who works in the film industry on a independent basis, but also for the union here in Calgary. Love video games. Video games are great. But mental illness bender, as we like to say in this circle a little bit. And yeah, these talks are just so important because honestly, my brain is not capable of doing it while trying to shoot things. So
Yes.
it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I am Des. My pronouns are they, them. I'm non-binary. I work in the adult film industry and am a sex worker. And I like hanging out with my friends and talking about stuff. I don't really play as much video games as I used to, but I'm hoping to sort of get back into that. My Twitch stream has been very non-existent as of late. Turns out travel takes a lot out of you. And I have been out of the country 3 times in the last 2.5 months. Struggle. So, and that's sort of why. So thank you for everyone who is new and everyone who is coming back, because we did take a little bit of a break. You know, life happens, work happens, and it as we like to create space in here for everyone to have good conversations, we also want to make this like a fun thing and not like a job thing.
Yeah.
Oh, and I just realized that I could see the bottom of my monitor. Just a little bit of a camera distance. It's fine.
There we go.
I fix. Yeah. So welcome. I'm so glad to be talking to you guys again. I've missed you lots, even though I technically saw one of you like 2 weeks ago. Or like less than that. I don't know.
I don't even. My brain is so fried from this past month. I don't even know anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It is May.
Yeah.
That's all I know. That is May. But tonight, we're gonna talk. It's gonna get a little spicy tonight. It's not gonna get explicit, but it will get a little bit of spicy because we're gonna talk about sexual desire and sexuality. Yeah. I know a little bit more about one than the other. but we're gonna do our best.
Yeah.
To be clear, you know,
Yeah. Well, we just
we
want to
all
be
need to figure what box we're in on that one.
Yeah. We all want to be upfront. And
You know,
That was not a euphemism. I'm now realizing what I just said. That is not what I was trying to say at all. Oh my god.
we do all
Continue.
have to-
Someone pick up the topic. Let's
no,
go.
I think we need to bask in this. I think we need to
No.
stop and all just bask in that moment.
God.
We'll just take a minute here and
What box are you in, Kara?
No boxes. None. I'm in the desert of boxes. The figment of imagination boxes. That's the boxes I'm in right now. Use your imagination.
but no, we did want to be upfront. I think asexuality is something as well I don't know as much about. Though I have done a little bit, like in the work that I used to do, it came up here and there, and so I have some peripheral knowledge of it. The sexual desire piece is more kind of where my knowledge base is and sort of lived experience exists. But we did want to speak to it because it's legit. It doesn't get talked about as much as it probably should, because sexuality does very much exist on a spectrum, and sexual desire exists on a spectrum, asexuality exists on a spectrum, and so that is something we wanted to kind of give space to. And I think for folks that are watching, I think if people do feel moved to speak to asexuality from a sort of lived experience perspective or just some knowledge that they have, I think that'd be fantastic. I think that's definitely something we want to encourage. We'll try and catch comments and questions as they pop up in chat, and we will we have the ability to highlight various things. I'll highlight my little squid. Of course, it just said squid.
Just this
Yeah,
no emo.
but that it will pop up.
Yeah.
There we go. We'll highlight Halibut, who feels like playing No Man's Sky.
For real.
Yeah.
So if we got ace babes in the chat, let us know and give us your thoughts, opinions, and experiences as we're talking about stuff.
Yeah.
I just made up ace babes, and I'm very proud of it.
Yep. Point it.
Point it.
Yeah.
No. I would say like the two of you have kind of like put your information out there. Like for me, it's more along the lines of more on the spectrum of asexuality for myself. Again, we don't want to think about this thing as a linear thing, but definitely more on the asexual side of sexuality paradigm, so to speak. But I don't identify as asexual because there has been just a minute couple times in my life when I was like, what the fuck is this?
What is this feeling? What is this feeling? Why is this even making me feel this way?
I don't understand. So that's where I just want to give that as a heads up, is like there is a little bit of lived experience coming from me, I guess. But I just wanted to set that out in the chat. But I feel like the first topic we are doing is actually the sexual desire piece, correct? That was our topic for today.
Yes.
So I will let my more sexual friends start off on this one.
That's sex, baby.
Wow. Okay, we're starting like that. That's fine.
So before we started, I got in here and immediately was like, I apologize for the chaos energy that's gonna happen today. I got off of work like right before I came in here and like ran in and just like everything's set up. Let's go. So I've still got a little just lingering chaos energy from work. So I sort of professionally work in the business of sexual desire, I would say. In that I sell sexual products and sexual services for cash money. So there's like a capitalism element to it, obviously, but there's also like a psychological element. So I feel like I know a lot about sexual desire, even if myself, I don't feel like is a super sexual person.
Mm-hmm.
My my sexuality over my lifetime has gone from like hypersexual to like not sexual at all, like just having periods of very many years where I didn't have sex because of hormone imbalances or antidepressants or whatever, to like now I'm like at a middling stage where it's like it's good but I don't think about it all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think for myself too, I think I've never, one of the aspects of myself that I've never really had caused the question is that I am a sexual person. That said, like a lot of it is sort of in terms of identities. I do identify as a demisexual, and so for me, um, the ebb and flow of it is like, for me to like, I think there is sexual desire that I have for people. Um, the crush, the thirst, the seeing people, certain humans out there who are like, oh damn, like that. There, I do have those moments, but for me, in terms of like engaging with that sexual part of myself, like I do require some sort of emotional groundwork to be laid. Pun unintended. Some groundwork to be there, um, just because that's sort of, I don't date casually, so I don't like. I'm not on Tinder. I also identify as a quirky alone, which is another identity people might not know about. And that's essentially quickly, quirky alone is sort of an identity that revolves around sort of challenging the idea of dating for dating's sake, and that like only coupled people are happy, and that you can't be happy single. And so quirky loans kind of try and challenge that narrative. Um, and there's a whole spectrum of that, and we can get into that maybe as this conversation unfolds. But for me, the sexual desire piece has always been there. Um, but in terms of like wanting to have sex and actually having sex, um, I need some sort of some emotional connection to be present for that to be something I'm interested in. So yeah, again, I don't identify as ace or a romantic, but um, yeah, I don't know. I'll leave it there. Maybe throw it to Kara.
Well, I think the first thing that we should kind of clarify is when we talk about sexual desire, I think we have to clarify what that means, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about the idea of thinking about sex? Is that the main concept, or is it the physical, what we call horniness that people experience? This desire to physically, interact with another body of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking about the sexual desire that is like presented to us in society as like, very much sold to us in different facets and different forms? Um, the sexual desire component of it, I think, is just, it's always been very distant to me. I remember growing up and really thinking something was broken inside my body,
Mm-hmm.
especially going through puberty and witnessing my network and people around me have this huge influx in interest in something that I just really didn't understand.
The raging
Um,
hormones.
well, and that was the thing, is just like, even when people say that today, like I look back at my existence growing up and I'm just like, I don't get it. I don't understand it. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like there, it goes to the extreme sometimes. I'm just like, I feel like this is just made up. Like I like
Something people talk about, but I feel like
no
everyone's
raging
just playing a prank
hormones.
on
I
me.
feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
bullshit. I think people just using an excuse to behave however they want when they're a teenager. But that's mostly because in my experience and how I guess my brain developed, um, just wasn't a component that I ever found any interest in. Um, yes, of course, there's like a lot of mixture of oppressive thoughts that happened in my brain during that time as well. It's just like denying any sort of attraction that I would have, which would be very rare, but it wasn't towards men. And so you would sit there and go like, people would be like, look at this magazine, Carol, isn't this guy cute? And I'd be like, "Ugh," and they would change the vocabulary, isn't he sexy? And I'm just like, oh no.
Nope.
Mhm.
Of course I wouldn't say that. I'd just be like, ha, and then go away.
He has a
Um,
face.
Yeah, has a face. Cool. But it was also a conversation that through my experience, I never really had talks with people. I was never part of those conversations where people would talk about their sexuality, really. My household growing up was very much like we had the talk when I was like 5, and that was pretty much it. They're like, we taught our kids that this happens in a very limited perspective bubble of what it could be. And then it was just not something that was a conversation in our household at all. Of course, I had other means of like learning and being educated, and I was really fortunate to have some relatives who were much more engaged in having those open conversations. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing where like, yeah, I have these moments that I'm just like, I feel like everyone's just lying about this shit, and
Everyone's just making it up. This is some
just
pseudoscience
all
bullshit.
making it up. I don't
Mhm.
know what this feeling is. Yeah. So
I was the opposite in that I knew that sex was a thing, or that sexual desire was a thing, at a pretty young age, like probably like before I should have ever been doing anything, but not because it was like I thing I saw and then emulated. Like, because I
Mhm.
wasn't really exposed to it. Like, my parents weren't like hyper conservative, but they were definitely like not letting me watch anything with sex scenes in it, and I wasn't even allowed to watch MTV until I was like 15.
Ooh,
But like,
MTV, so scandalous.
so scandalous, all those booty shaking everywhere. Damn. But no, like I just knew what it was. Like I
Mhm.
was like, I think this feels good. I want to do it with other people.
Mhm.
But you know, that didn't happen until I was an adult, thankfully. But yeah, so I didn't get a really like a technical talk. I don't remember my parents ever sitting me down and being like, this is what the sex is. It was just something that was sort of a continuing conversation,
Mhm.
like as I grew up. It was like from the very babying, like, oh, like mommy and daddy kiss because they love each other, like,
Mhm.
to explain why my parents kissed, and like all the way to like when my little brother was being born. They were like, okay, here's the mechanics. But like it was always a continuing conversation. It was never just like one and done. It was like if I had questions, I knew I could just go ask my mom because she was pretty open.
Yeah. Think for me, definitely didn't have the talk again. I think similar to Des, my parents are not like hyper conservative, but they're definitely, my background is like Eastern European, right? So like that sort of stoic, we don't talk about it, your school's gonna cover it, we're good kind of thing. Um, so I got the abysmal sexual education from my grade school experience. So whichever teacher drew the short straw teaches sexual education, and naturally within grade school there's no conversation around sexual desire or pleasure, right? So all we got was like, penis goes in vagina, sperm comes out, babies happen, don't have babies until you're ready, blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, STDs are a thing. And that was it pretty much,
If
right?
you have sex, you will get chlamydia and die.
Yeah, yeah. You'll get pregnant,
oh,
then you'll have
so
chlamydia, and then die.
fatalist.
Yes.
Right.
No, it's a quote from Mean Girls.
Oh, okay. I was just like, wait a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. So like to be perfectly honest, like one thing where we did sort of have a conversation. I remember growing up, my parents didn't censor we had movie nights on Saturdays, and my parents didn't really censor those movies. But whenever there was like a problematic joke or a sex scene, um, we would pause and we would talk about what was happening, right? And we would pause during certain sex scenes, and it was very awkward. And I wanted it over as soon as possible. But my parents did sort of talk about like what was happening, what led up to it. Um, any sex scene that lasted longer than like a minute, we ended up fast forwarding through it, which sort of explained my parents' comfort levels with it, and
It's
exposing my
like, all
brother.
right, this is a thing, but we're not going to sit here and
We're
watch it
not going
with
to
you.
linger in this, but I think, to be perfectly honest, like in those moments, that I think that's sort of like when that sexual desire started happening for me. And like early on, like I knew the kinds of people I was attracted to, women sort of, and then later on, as I understood gender identity, femme presenting non-binary people, like I'm pretty, as far as I know, monosexual in terms of like who I'm attracted to. But I knew that there was something there that I'm like, this person here, there's weird feelings, weird, pleasant, fun feelings. But again, I didn't really know what to make of that. And I'm actually just looking at a comment from Xandra here, talking about like wondering if you're the only person who got the masturbation as a good thing talk from the parent. I didn't. The concept of masturbation was
Not
something
even close.
no, not even
Not, not even a conversation.
again, from that teacher that
think
drew the
so.
short straw. Masturbation is normal, and that was it. That was the only statement on masturbation that I ever heard. Um, and
I had the opposite talk, but not in the way you think. In so for some kids, and if you've been around a lot of kids, you know this. Some kids learn to explore their bodies very early on in life, and don't know when or where is an appropriate place to do that.
They were like, Des, not here. Not in the mall.
No, honey. No. And like it, but like truly in like the most innocent way. It's just like, oh, it's like finding out you're ticklish. But like you know, and just to like just like did not understand, had no scope or nothing. It was just like, you know, picking your nose. It was just a thing that I did.
Yeah.
As a kid, and you know, my parents would be like, "Get your finger out of your nose," or you know, "Get your hands out of your pants." Like,
yeah,
do that here. And then like figured, oh, okay, this is just a thing I can do by myself, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So I don't know that like they ever told me. I don't think they ever like needed to tell me it was good, because they were like, oh, they're already doing it. Like we just need to tell them not to do it in public.
Yeah. Well, I also sort of figured it out on my own too. But it still was. I didn't really. There was no. It was funny because I I obviously did it, masturbated. I mean, kids do. It's normal. But I didn't have a word for it. It was just this thing that I did, and I didn't think anything of it. Right. And to be perfectly honest, like my first real encounters with the concept, and people are going to laugh about this, was freaking American Pie, and this dude fucking a apple pie, right? And of course, like all of the other instances within the movie where that sort of like masturbation jokes were happening, and that was the first time like I really understood that this was there was a word for it, and it existed and other people did it. But experiencing that way, it was a joke, because in that movie, like we laugh at it, right?
Yeah.
It was a joke. It was something to be made fun of. And then in terms of like my own masculine socialization, cis boys don't masturbate. They're supposed to be having sex, even like 12, right? So this idea that you masturbate was either a joke or it was seen as something pathetic, right?
Yeah.
you should go hook up with a girl, right? Real men hook up with girls, like that's real boys hook up, whatever. Um, and I don't know, it really, to be perfectly honest, it sort of like put a damper on me engaging with my sexuality in a really healthy way. Not, wasn't repressing anything per se, but it was just like, I don't have that desire to go and just have sex, right, randomly.
Yeah.
Um, so something is wrong, and I'm just not going to talk about it, you know. And so there was elements. Again, it's not quite as bad because it's not being, the people I was attracted to was correct as far as like gender socialization was concerned, um, but I never had anything to say to male or masculine cohorts, peers, because they had their own language. As far as I knew, boys at 12 or 11, 13, 14 were like had 10 sexual partners, right? And they were always having sex, right?
They had none.
Yeah,
Most
no, I know. But
this is yeah.
as far like, again, I've been in locker rooms and male locker rooms and stuff like that, and that is the only conversation that's happening in those locker rooms, right? Sexual conquests, supposed sexual conquests, right? Um, True or not, but again, it was a weird formative years, I'll say.
That's funny. As you were talking about it, I remembered something about like me and my own like sex education, because masturbation was another thing that was taught. Because by the time I was receiving sex education, I was still in Catholic school. So it was basically just reproductive health. It was like nothing about sex itself, really. It was like pretty comprehensive reproductive health. Like, you know, I knew what fallopian tubes were and all that jazz. But as far as like dynamics and like sexual desire and all that stuff, like that was not touched with a 10-foot pole. So much so that as I got older, when people talked about jerking off or they talked about masturbation, like up until I was like 14 or 15, I thought only dudes did that because I didn't see masturbation as a word for what I was doing. Like, because they only ever talked about guys doing that. So, like, I couldn't conceptualize what masturbation was because only a thing that I heard talked about. It was like boys had, like, this secret ritual that they were doing. And it was like, because I just didn't know the functionality of anything. It's like, they didn't talk about specifically how they jerked off, but they talked about jerking off.
Yeah.
Like, all right, I guess that's just the thing that guys do. Not realizing that masturbation like existed with the like that was a word for the thing that I was also doing. Because just female masturbation wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's just no word for it. Weird.
Well, and like when you think about it, like it isn't, as far as like accessible media is concerned. Like, not to go all film nerd here, but like any film depicting female pleasure, and we're talking about like cisgender women, is like an R movie, right? Rated R, basically considered porn, even though it's hardly that, but not by a long shot. But I mean, I can't think of it like there's a ton, again, when I talk about like the media exposure that I had, that I learned that masturbation was a joke or pathetic. Every rom-com throughout history has some sort of masturbation joke, right? For men. And I can't think of a single movie that I ever watched where there was a hint that women masturbated, or that there was pleasure involved in sex, right? Pleasure for men, of course, but not for women, right? And if it was, again, it was a rated R movie and it was a scandalous piece of film.
And like film and media, especially like when we were growing up, it's like, well, like, you know, women had sex, but they were more like very well-paid fleshlights.
Yeah.
Because their autonomy didn't matter, their pleasure didn't matter. They were just things that men could have sex with.
Yeah.
And like, you know, occasionally you get like the pure romance movie that's like it really builds it up. But or you get the opposite thing where it's a movie entirely about a woman's virginity and the removal of one's virginity, like that being like a whole plot point or thing, which virginity is a social construct and not a real thing. Thank you. So yeah, we were either sexless or not people.
Yeah.
For a lot of the media that I had growing up. I mean, thankfully, that's changed in a lot of ways. But I remember, like, Courtney Cox Arquette, after she did Friends, she did a TV show. She was like some hot cougar or something. Like, it was like a very, like, Sex in the City sort of like.
Cougar Town, right?
Was it Cougar Town? I think so. It was either Cougar Town or Dirt. But it was Courtney Cox Arquette, and like there was this one scene, I think it might have even been in the pilot, where like she's masturbating and like it's just a vibrator under a blanket situation, and then she like takes the vibrator and she puts it on her nightstand, and like people were like, there was no nudity in the scene whatsoever. Dirt. Thank you, Sandra. Like there was no nudity in the scene, not that I can remember. I don't know, it's been however many fucking years since I watched that show. But people went off about it. Like, the former Friends actress stars in salacious new TV show. Like, I just remember people losing their goddamn minds over a bullet vibrator. Guys.
Well, but it makes sense when you are in a culture where, again, the focus isn't on a woman's desire for anything, right? And when you put that in people's faces who have been conditioned to that, they get offended or weirded out by it or questioning it or feeling it's such a strange thing, because now you like when you're talking about these instances where you're just like, yeah, I remember going to school and everything was just about, how guys could do that and all that stuff. And, I had a very similar thing. Sexuality was very openly spoken about between the boys at school. It was almost to the point where I found rather obnoxious, to the extent where I just like roll my eyes and exit the space in which these things were happening, because I just found it so it was really, quite partially offensive, because at one point you're also dealing with like them deciding what they can talk about women in any way, shape, or form in the context of how they see fit, right? And when I think back to little Kara, she coped with it the way that she knew how to deal with that, which was just don't involve, don't engage, get the fuck out of there kind of situations. But I remember just ruminating on it away from school and being just like, how come this is just for them? That kind of question to it. Not obviously thinking more about, huh?
Why don't I get that?
Well, there's never a me thing. It was always like, how come they get to talk about this so openly, so freely? Why do they get to draw dicks all over the school? Like, I want the vulva revolution to happen. Okay. I want vulvas drawn everywhere because I feel like it's payback time.
Hence your pursuit of boobard, right? Is that?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things. No, because boob art boys are just like, oh yeah, boobs. No, I'll be like, you're gonna have to look at this the way that you forced us to look at that shit. So fuck you. But it's one of those things where I remember being quite upset about the inequality around it. Although I never. That was what I was more mad about. This is a social discrimination. How am I going to deal with this? Versus actually being like, oh, what about how I feel about it or anything like that? because it wasn't important to me. It wasn't something I was seeking out to do. It wasn't a biological expression that I was like, I need to do this right now. This is gonna make me feel better about myself and my life and quote unquote desire to go do. Just wasn't there. So it's kind of interesting when I look back on it. I was just like, nah, I was just trying to advocate for representation of women to talk about sex.
Kara, your children, the children's TV show based on your life is like, it's not Lil Einstein's, it's Lil Feminist. It's like you being like an 8-year-old little feminist.
Basically, probably. Yep. That's probably what it was. But it felt very, very isolating though, right? Because no one was wanting to have that conversation.
No.
You know, like couldn't have that with my peers at all. Like, fuck. I remember there was this guy, I don't know, this is a little detour anecdotal thing. I remember there was a guy that I swam with, and he made it his mission to wear these like really misogynistic t-shirts. And this was in the age of like the 50 Cent rapping, you know, where you could just say anything and all things and it was fine for young boys to do it. But like I remember this one shirt to a T, and it was a 10 things list that women have to do for men. And it was things like make me a sandwich, like all the really stereotypical things. And like at the bottom, it was just like women always know their place kind of stuff. And he got to wear this to school on a regular. This was a Catholic school, FYI.
Oh my God.
And it was just like one of those things where I remember looking back on it, and I was just like, this conversation can't even start happening. And then it was just rage. It was just like a bundle of rage. But yeah, no, it's something. I want to bring it back to sexual desire. So for those who have this expression and experience more often, how do you define it? What do you feel when this happens?
I'm going to clarify my terms a little bit.
Okay.
I think there is a difference between aesthetic attraction and sexual desire. Because there are people that I think look very, very nice and that I'm happy to look at, but I do not necessarily want to fuck them. So I think people confuse the two a lot. It's like, if you think they're hot, then that means that you want to have sex with them. Like, no, something about the proportions of their face or their style or their hair or the way they carry themselves, like, looks nice and I like to look at it. That's fine. I don't want to touch it though. That can stay over there where I can look at it. There's lots of people online who I feel about this way, because like I think also as an adult, you don't see sexual desire in a bubble. Like, it exists in the context of like all the things that you've seen attached to sexual desire. So if I were to take aesthetic attraction, like, to like what I feel is like a logical conclusion, or like to what people feel is like a normative conclusion, like, oh, I think they are good looking, I would like to kiss their face, I would like to have sex with them. Like, that's sort of the thing that people go in. But also, like, as an adult, it's like, I think they look nice and I would like them to stay over there, because if I start kissing them, then I have to deal with whatever problems that they have. And also, what if I'm bad at sex? Like, I'm making adult pragmatic decisions in my head, and it affects my sexual desire. Because I'm not attracted to someone who's going to complicate my life. Not anymore. Before, that was a turn on. Now, many years of therapy later, not so much. So there's like a lot tied into it. Like, it's not something that I experience in a bubble on its own. I sort of can sometimes, or I have in the past, especially if it's kind of upfront that it's like, this is going to be a one-night stand sort of situation. I really only have to rely on the fact that I am aesthetically attracted to you. And I don't have to worry about all of the trappings that come with sexual desire because we're just going to do the sex thing and then we're going to not talk to each other ever again. Like that's, more appealing in certain situations.
Sorry, just to put a pin in that for a second. Sorry, not a pin, but like to interject on that. So you don't see there being a connection of like having sex with someone and you separate that from sexual desire though. Like you'll do the physicality of sex, but not consider that sexual attraction or sexual desire.
No, that's still sexual desire. It's just that what I was saying is that I often don't experience sexual desire purely because a person is aesthetically nice looking.
Right.
I'm attracted to the nice lookingness and the stuff around them in their situation. Like if I think that this is a good call for me to make for my social circle, for my mental health, for my body, for my safety, like it's I'm continuing a lot of things. Sometimes, and in the past, that has not been an issue. That is like I've been able to approach sexual attraction inside of a bubble because that was sort of the predetermined arrangement. Like Tinder hookups, for example. It's like we're gonna go on one date, we're probably gonna have sex, and then I'm never gonna talk to you again. So I don't have to worry about all the stuff around that, would usually turn me off from a person. You got, I don't know, a zillion drama riddled friends and no job and like blah blah, all the stuff that goes around a normal person, and having life complications and all that jazz. If the predetermined arrangement is that we're not going to deal with any of that, I find it much easier to be sexually attracted to someone with like just a person that I don't know very well if we've just decided we're not going to know each other very well. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I think it's different for me because again, from a demisexual perspective, I'm not able to separate that. Again, like I think from what I'm hearing, Des, like there's that aesthetic noticing of an individual where you're like, oh, they're a very pleasant human, and if contextually it makes sense, it can lead into potentially thinking about, oh, I actually maybe want to be with this person physically, right? For me, there's no desire to like, let's just have some sex and then go our separate ways. To me, and again, maybe this is just how I understand demisexuality. I'm not interested in that, right? For me, the sexual desire, and I think this is sort of like where it can get hard to define, because like when I think about it plainly, sexual desire is like I want to physically be with another human, right? I want to physically be with this particular human who I do find aesthetically pleasing for some criteria or not. But for me, the sexual desire piece involves some sort of emotional connection, and some sort of longevity, right? Not necessarily saying this is the one, because I don't believe in that concept to begin with. But to me, there is a desire to have some long-term connection with a person. Otherwise, I'm not going to even go there, right? I might find a person, sexually attractive or aesthetically attractive or what have you, but if that's not necessarily going to be if there isn't like a long-term, not even long-term, it's hard to like put a timeline on it per se, but if there's not going to be an extended involvement, let's say, then that sexual desire piece for another individual is hard to come to, but I definitely agree that finding somebody aesthetically appealing and sexual desire are separate things, right? They can exist maybe on a continuum, right? But so, for instance, like again, if I find somebody aesthetically attractive, right, but it's clear that it's not really going to go anywhere or not going to move past like maybe a casual acquaintance or I'm never going to see them again, I don't often think about that person anymore,
Yeah.
If I work with them, great, but I won't. There won't be that
You're not like
desire.
pining after them, like
No, like
if only.
it's very easy for me to like say like, okay, that's not happening, so that desire is not going to be there because
Yeah.
you know, even that person wanted to hook up one time, I'm not interested in that, right? And again, I'm not saying that like the other side of that is like we're going to get married, right? Um, Again, we want to challenge the monogamy um, monopoly on relationships, right? But again, if there's not some sort of like some sort of extended dynamic, um, then it's just not present for me.
Yeah.
Well,
But
it's
yeah.
the interpretation of how I see the world around sexual desire is that um, one of the one of the myths that people have is like people who potentially have no to little sexual desire in their existence and interactions with people is that the performance of oppressing your sexual desire is what's actually happening, right? That's what a lot of people who have this is what you kind of hear from a lot of people who are very sexual. They'll be like, oh, stop oppressing yourself, stop suppressing the feelings, it's just
Mhm.
the anxiety, just work around it. And
You
what
just
I
haven't found the right person yet.
yeah, just haven't found the right person yet. Oh man, I've heard it all. Just try. Ugh, thank you. But it's for me anyway, when people talk about sexual desire, I'm like, I need you to understand it's more of the absence of that feeling is
Mhm.
why that identity really kind of makes sense to me, because it's not present. It's not something I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, oh yeah, let's get at it. Like that's not how I feel like
You
99%
are
of the year.
you are the sexual equivalent of a person talking about weed who has never smoked weed.
Correct. That's exactly it. That's 100% it. So yeah, so it's one of those things where it is one of the more like socially talked about things when people do talk about asexuality or demisexuality, where people are just like, you need to stop just pretending that you're not interested in people
Mhm.
or diverting your energy away from this, like you are capable. And they do this like positive spin on it. They're just like, someone will like you one day. And you're just like, cool, thank you. But it's finding and navigating this conversation by saying like, I don't need to be pitied, I just want to be understood,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Because the idea of, from my perspective, our society, our culture is hypersexual to
Oh yeah.
me, right? It's a main focus on how you are successful in your life. It is something that is the main priority in a lot of people's partnerships. um People talk about it in certain contexts constantly.
Mhm.
And it's something that for me it's like a topic you're so disinterested, but someone's like, watch my PowerPoint, and you're like, I
I
don't want
don't
to.
care.
I don't want it. um but it's interesting that way how I've kind of navigated people's wanting to express sexual desire as someone who doesn't really experience it all that
Mhm.
often. Um, I'll tell a little story about how working with Des on this documentary and people discovering and finding out that I'm just like not a very sexual person in a space that is very 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 sexual.
Mhm.
And whether they meant to do it or not, I suddenly became like the zoo attraction, and I'm the alpaca in the zoo. Like I don't know, like people would kind of hover around and they're just like, how far can I ask questions about this, right? And they're kind of
Mhm.
like poking at me a little bit to get answers out of it, because they're seeing I'm just like this experiment or something.
To
But
create context for those who don't know, We shot a documentary about porn together.
Oh,
so
yes.
who Kara is talking about is porn stars. Porn stars, I find, are very interested in people with less than what other people consider a normative amount of sexual desire, because it's a portion of the community that we don't ever interact with. We're just like, but you don't think about it all the time?
Yeah.
It's like, because not only do we think about it all the time because of work, we think about it all the time because other people are making us think about it all the time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, totally. And that was something I was hyper aware of when I was shooting the documentary. But yeah, it was another just it was an experience to for me anyway. I think what I grew out of it was having the capacity to start having conversations about that. But it's interesting. So for instance, I had a conversation with the Alexes out in New Zealand a couple years ago, and it was a really interesting conversation that morphed into this comment where the conversation about sexual desire or the act of having sex was, I had a debate. I was like, I don't think sexual desire or having sex is a need. Like, you don't need sex to survive. It's
Mhm.
not air, it's not food, it's not water, it's not shelter, right? And for me, from my perspective, it's not. I am a living human, and I go on with my day, and I'm still here functioning, right? And it was immediate between the two Alexes who came back. They're like, "Are you fucking kidding? That is the highest need on my list. It comes before food." And I was
Yeah.
sitting there being like appalled because I kind of got ganged up on that answer a little bit. But
Mhm.
I mean, for sure. But I mean, yeah.
right, and it's that, I think that's where another component of it that is such a polarizing, not polarizing, but like what's the word I'm thinking about, contrast perspective on sexual desire,
Mhm.
right? And it was always one of those things too where people, when they like when we have conversations about sexual desire and someone's very outspoken about it, I've always felt so uncomfortable because it's almost like they're directing this information at me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. You have presented
Mhm.
this on a plate, and I'm like, I wish to push the plate back to you,
Mhm.
but not be rude about it, because apparently it's rude to not accept people's conversations about that.
Yeah. And I just want to hop in. I want to. It's like a distinction is popping into my brain here too, especially when you talked about the Alex's reaction to your statement, because I too believe that sexual having like sex is not a need; it's a desire, it's a want. That's sexual desire. Um, but I think there's a difference between engaging with sexual desire for and myself as an individual and having sex with another person, right? So I can engage with my own sexual desire in my own time through masturbation on my own, right? Having sex with another person, I think, is different, right? And so what I think, and I'm just going to throw this out here because I'm just talking about my own personal perspective here. I would argue that connection is a need that we have as humans, right? But I don't believe that always needs to include sexual, physical intimacy.
Mm.
Perhaps physical intimacy, um, but I'm just, again, this is just my own personal opinion here. The idea that sexual intimacy gets conflated with connection, right?
Yes.
If you're not having sex with other humans, there's something wrong with you, right? And I think that belongs in the conversation around the sexuality spectrum. Um, I do believe very strongly that if you don't have connection with other humans, you know, you're missing. I think that's part of how we take care of ourselves is having connection with other human beings, right? Um, it does not require sex to make a connection with another human being, right? Um, but society at large does, I think, put that forward.
Oh
I think
yeah.
we see that a lot in the rhetoric around men and women not being able to be friends, right? Because there's this inherent, apparently, sexual desire between men and women, right? Um, and that if there's a cisgender heterosexual male, cisgender heterosexual female, they inevitably will consider and desire sex at some point with each other. And that's inescapable. That's taken as sort of this truism about existence, and that's bullshit. It's just not true. Um, and there's other things I can talk about in terms of this idea that men are more visual. That's bullshit. Um, but just in that terms of like differentiating sexual desire from having sex with other humans, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, because I mean, and just kind of like, I had a very similar take, Joe, a second ago. Only mine was that, you know, sex isn't a need, but I do believe that pleasure is a need, and
Yeah.
I don't mean just sexual pleasure. I mean the ability to have things in your environment that you enjoy, and I think that is a need. Things
Mm-hmm.
that bring you joy, things that bring you good feelings, things that bring you dopamine. I do so because I think if you to deprive people of um what's the word I'm looking for? External stimuli, things that get their brain going, like enrichment.
Mm-hmm.
Like to deny people of that is a thing that we reserve for what society believes is its hardest criminals. It's
Yeah.
prison.
Yeah.
Like there's no art, there's no, you know, team sports, there's no television, there's no video games. It's like we've denied you all of the pleasures of human existence because
Mm-hmm.
you are a bad person. Like, and people come out of that not good.
Yeah.
When you deny them joy and pleasure. And like, so self pleasure or engaging with pleasure in other people, I feel like is a need.
Mm-hmm.
um it's not a thing you will die without, but there's a lot of things that we need that we wouldn't die without.
Yeah.
But
I
would
don't know
just
what you're
make us,
talking about.
what would just make us very fucked up.
Yeah.
I
Well-
will one day evolve to not need oxygen. It's fine.
Well, to just throw it out there, like you can fully survive without human connection.
Yeah.
You can survive all by yourself, right? Um, but it does some fucked up things to your brain, and I think I don't know. Came up yesterday. Radicalization. I think um, not having those interpersonal connections and not having more than two um, can lead someone to internalize a lot of angry thoughts
Mhm.
and a lot of angry feelings that can lead somebody to seek some sort of vessel for their hatred and the inner turmoil that they feel that they don't have an explanation for, they can't put a finger on or a pin into or whatever, right? Yeah, survive. Sandra's got it here. Survive, but is it worth it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like one note across a series of measures is technically music, but doesn't make anybody feel good.
I mean, not to nerd out on that, but there's a quote from an old TV show, an ancient TV show called Angel. Xandra will get it.
I know.
And one of the characters in the show is a demon who can sing. And there's an episode where there's a human who finds a way to freeze time. And Angel and this demon go and rescue him because his time machine is going to envelop the whole world and stop time forever for everybody. And there's a moment where the demon's saying that he's talking about like, I can hold a note forever, right? But But if you hold a note forever, eventually that just becomes noise. It's the change we're looking for. It's the next note after that, and the next note after that. And eventually songs end, right?
Mhm.
And Joss Whedon bullshit aside, it's a very powerful metaphor for life, for existence, right? Is, we're looking for things to change. Good moments happen, but we can't live in a positive moment forever. And the flip side is that, and the good thing is that negative moments don't exist forever either.
Yeah.
You can have a string of them, right? But they don't exist forever. But to desire this, like, I'm going to stay in one moment in time, or in one circle of my life, I'm never going to change. I'm never going to evolve. I mean, yeah, survive, but is it worth it?
Right.
Doubt it.
And like, sex is lit sometimes.
Yeah, it's true.
Not that any of those extra notes in your song need to come from sex.
Yeah.
But you just need extra notes. Sometimes sometimes that's art. Sometimes
that's riding your
food.
motorcycle. So
sometimes that's riding your motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's happening tomorrow. I'm so stoked. Let's get us out of the garage.
I'm very excited for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a literal motorcycle. That's not a euphemism for anything. Just to be
Oh
fun.
no.
Yeah.
No.
See, why can't I just say
because it's a conversation about sexual desire. So
I know.
Talking about sex. This
Oh
is
my
within
God.
context. This is not
Yeah.
me. This is not me throwing out weird, thirsty comments in chat.
Jeez. It didn't snow. No, Xander
No.
did not snow. So
it's a healthy like 16 right now. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, so I noticed that we just hit about an hour, and I know that we kind of been crossing over between asexuality and sexual desire, but do we have more questions about sexual desire in particular?
Yeah, in chat. Maybe.
Does anyone have some comments?
Comments about sexual desire. There's lots of it, just like any other thing, there's healthy ways to approach sexual desire and there's unhealthy ways to approach sexual desire.
Yes.
Healthily would be, in a solo scenario would be, easing yourself into the things that you're comfortable into and, giving yourself time and space and not expecting yourself to meet up to any other standards. I exist in a community of hypersexual individuals, like most of them being women or femme presenting, like just because that's the group of people I'm in. And when I first sort of got involved with this group, it was a little intimidating because I was like, maybe I'm not sexual at all. Like, it's like some of these people, like, just talking about how they masturbated for 3 hours, or like, this is the 5th guy that they've had sex with this week, or like, they're just like very just like high powered, high sexuality people. And they're just like, sexuality is just another thing that happens in their world, as as often as going to dinner with a friend or seeing a movie or playing a video game. Like, it's just part of their vernacular and their thing, and it's something they're all comfortable talking about. Not that I wasn't comfortable talking about any of it. It was just when faced with that, the reality of this and like all the people in my circle, it's like, maybe I'm not sexual at all. Maybe I'm so vanilla. It's like, I'm not actually. I just don't engage with it the same way my friends do.
Yeah.
But then, there are people who conflate sexual desire with love. Those are not the same thing. And, putting a body part inside of another person does not mean that they love you or that you love them.
Well, and that's an interesting thing, right? Because when you really talk about the global structure of what sex has been kind of co-opted as, especially under a religious context for some, looking at you, Christianity and Catholicism, the whole idea of sex not only has been co-opted to not provide pleasure or desire, it's unanimously dedicated to developing children,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for I remember listening to priests talking about that in school assemblies and things like that, and they would talk about how the greatest gift from God is to have children, and that is the highest performance of love, right? So it's really quite something when you start talking about a more systemic understanding of what people have been taught what love is,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do you show love, right? And a lot of people who been, I use this word delicately, indoctrinated into believing that the only way for them to express love at the highest level is to have sex. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't encompass support and trust building and having
Safe,
communication. What's that?
safety.
Safety, right? It's like you get married, you produce babies, it is all good. That
Yeah.
Yeah.
is the extent of the human experience for love.
Well, like when you've redefined sex to mean procreation, and that love equals procreation, of course that actually it checks the boxes of that criteria, right?
Mhm,
You get married, you have sex, you produce a child. That means you love each other, right?
mhm,
Don't think too critically about love, because we don't want to get you divorced, right?
Hmm.
Don't think too critically about your own needs, and whether or not they're being met. Don't think too critically about what your partner's doing, um, but just trust that God's happy that you produced another human.
mhm,
Um, Again, I'm not. We don't want to necessarily, be too critical about stuff that might give people direction in life. But I think the reality is certain views on the world have skewed um, our understanding of what love can be and what love can involve and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's important to challenge that kind of stuff, um, because on the flip side, it's used to do so much harm. You know.
mhm. Well,
Uh,
and at the essence of it, think about it. As teenagers and as young people, most of the Catholic Church basically uses your virginity as a hostage,
yeah.
Hmm.
right? You cannot engage in this thing that is the most sacred component of love until you are married and seen on the side, like under the eyes of God.
Hmm.
And whether or not people believe that or not, there's lots of people who are Christians and Catholics who do not align with that, you know. But yeah, it is really quite something that if when you start talking about sexual desire, the first kind of alert bells that come off are people who are very much in line with the doctrine of
Hmm.
certain religions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense. It can get very intense.
Well,
Or
go ahead.
or not even just religion, capitalism,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because the industrial marriage complex
Mm,
of and the industry of marriage being one of the most fruitful, especially here in America. Um, there is sort of that sense of like being in a relationship means it's two people spending twice as much money on each other.
Yeah.
Like it's the ads for engagement rings, the
mm,
Valentine's Day fervor every year, the way that people equate sex and love to sort of like feed into each other, to feed further into a capitalistic, because people who have babies make a lot more money, and those
Yeah.
babies will eventually become workers for for the upper
mhm,
class. And like it's not even just limited to religion. Somebody who's raised outside of religion can still um like sort of see into this idea as sex equals love, because it sort of benefits the same people essentially
Hmm.
mm.
Yeah.
by the end of it. Because at the end
Oh,
of the day,
totally.
if you've had sex, if you love someone and you have sex with them and you have babies, you will spend exponentially more money in the system, and then that child becomes another piece of the system.
Mhm.
Think about how much reality TV is based on that,
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
right?
Well, I was
Have
actually
you,
gonna. Can I bring
fucking
it?
yes.
Gender reveal parties. That's the thing that I'm like, we need to do away with that as soon as fucking possible. The fact that they still exist is an affront to life as we know it. And when you talk about like a capitalist Mobius strip, like, good God, our gender reveal parties just like vortex for money. And and I mean, I have my own theories too on like um, people cheer just a little bit louder when they have a boy than they have a girl. Just saying, it's my own conspiracy theory. I don't have any evidence to back it up, but and I don't have evidence to the contrary because like if the cake is blue or whatever the fuck it is, um, obviously it's not pink, and so we don't have any data to measure it against it. But I don't know. People are a lot happier to see blue. Not that they're not
Well,
happy to see pink, but the blue is much more exciting for people. Anyways, that's just my soapbox. Fuck gender reveal parties. Just fuck them.
I don't know that I don't know that I've ever observed that phenomenon, but psychologically that would make sense to me if, you know, people were more excited about having boys, because sort of having boys is sort of a cheat code. It's like, oh, we have to deal with less raising you.
Yeah.
Because girls are always sort of like problems because they get hormonal. And then you have to worry about them getting pregnant when they're teenagers, and then you have to worry about making sure that they don't get hurt or targeted, they don't get discriminated against. Just it's like,
Yeah. Well,
so
thanks
it
to
wouldn't shock me if that were the case.
yeah,
Is what I'm saying.
a part of that is the boys will be boys clause. So as a parent, if you have a boy, so a cisgender male child, you can take your hands off the wheel and you don't have to raise them. They can do what they want because boys will be boys. But if you have a girl, you have to shield her because her virginity is the most important thing about her until you marry her off, right? Again, that's a really reductive sort of way of looking at it, but the reality is that's a part of it. Anyway, we do live in a patriarchy too that has all these other factors that, you know, sexualize girls at a younger age and don't hold boys accountable for their actions and all that kind of stuff, and that's a whole
That
other
specifically
thing.
sexualize girls of color
Yep.
younger than is entirely appropriate.
I remember a horrifying Twitter thread that was like someone was just asking like what was the first time that you were sexualized by a male, by a man, and some people were posting like as young as 9, and you know, these were black women or women of color who were saying, yeah, it was 9, 10, you know, 11, first time some dude said something sexual to me on the street or what have you. So again, it's not there's more to talk about in terms of that celebration of having a boy, but the reality is I think there needs to be more conversations around like, hey, you do need to raise boys. Like you can't just take your hands off the reins and let them do whatever because they're going to be fine because we live in a patriarchy. You got to put the effort in. But I do want to highlight something that just validates my anti-gender reveal party thing. I didn't know this, but
Oh yeah, I mean,
yeah,
sharks kill like not a lot of people a year,
no,
and that one gender reveal party set a forest on fire. So
yeah. But anyways,
but kicking it back to sexual desire and stuff, which is kind of nothing really segues me into this, so I'm just going to start talking about asexuality. Asexuality exists.
Yep.
Yep. We're just very plainly, I would like to say that. Because out of the few ace people in my life that I know, one of the biggest worries for them has been coming out, even though, like, sort of a thing being a non-issue shouldn't actually have to be a thing that you come out about. But it's sort of like the heteronormativity of like straight people, of like you're expected to be straight, you're expected to be sexual. Like being a sexual being is a thing that is like even a youth milestone of like, oh, it's like, you know, starting to look at girls different, like, you know, whatever. Like it's just like an expected milestone. When is not the case. Sexuality, just like gender and like sexual desire, sexuality, gender expression, they're all different scales and they're all different gradients in different places. They're not like equatable or one thing or the other. Like somebody's gender identity doesn't necessarily have to do with anything with their sexuality, with their sexual spectrum, because you can be gay and you can also be asexual. Like you can like sort of rationalize in your mind. It's like, well, if I were to have sexual feelings, I would have them about girls.
Yeah.
It's like you just kind of know. It's like, well, that would be, if that were ever to happen, which is probably not, you know, for an asexual person.
Yeah.
It's like I would be into girls, because also asexuality or sexual desire existing on a spectrum means that there are varying degrees of asexuality. People who are say sex repulsed versus people who are sex neutral or sex indifferent. Where it's like, you know, if it's like a thing my partner wants and I really enjoy this person, I really love this person, it's like I'm sort of fine with doing it. It's like sort of like going to the gym with my partner. It's like it's not anything I particularly enjoy, but I'm also not repulsed by it, so I'll do it. Versus someone who like the like being in a sexual situation feels gross, or seeing genitalia feels very upsetting. Like there's varying degrees of it, and I think people sort of, because, and everything's capitalism, because sex sells, and the addition of sex to capitalistic endeavors often makes them sell better or sell differently than other things. We're encouraged to engage in that behavior, and anything outside of that behavior is considered taboo.
Yeah.
Because it's not useful.
Yeah.
Like being asexual is not useful. Like to capitalism.
Well, yeah. Because it's not only just on a capitalistic structure, but also on a societal structure. You were seen as a, I don't use the term like damaged good, but people do not see you as a wanted item. Like it's something, and I that's a very blanket statement. That's obviously not true for everybody, but the importance of how people see, especially with dating, is that is a component that you have to check on compatibility, right? And it is perhaps one of, and I know it's not like a coming out thing. I've been very honest about my level of sexuality in my life for the last 7 or 8 years for sure. But the concept of me trying to explain to someone who I may develop feelings for, to be like, hey, so just so you know, this may not happen for a long time. Like, and they'll be like, what? Like a couple weeks? They'll be like, oh no, like a year or more. Don't know. Haven't figured it out yet. But it's like, I don't know when my brain's going to kickstart if I were in a relationship and they'll be like, hey, this is happening now. And I feel comfortable with that. But it's definitely not a great selling feature that people see. and that's a stigma thing that I wish was more talked about in terms of the
Yeah.
sexuality scale of things is, and it's not to say like you must be accepting of every person who's not sexual. Like
Right.
obviously not. Like everyone has a different compatibility shape, and you got to find the shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to fit. Um but it's really frustrating where you feel at a disadvantage to start with, and I think that's an authentic inhibitor to confidence and feeling whole and feeling capable and feeling wanted in the world. You know, it's not even just within a romantic or sexual partner, but within a network of friends and stuff. Like, do you become ostracized because that's a piece of something that you can't share similar feelings with?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think that's probably one of the more direct things that I would want to always have more conversations about with people, and having a more balanced understanding space instead of someone just being like, you just got to do it more. And you're like, great advice. Thank you. It's
So helpful.
so helpful right now.
Yeah, I am not asexual, but I feel like they're a piece of the asexual experience that I can empathize with possibly relates to like my sexuality, in that like I know what it's like to be attracted to a straight girl and to
Oh, Des.
be very compatible
Oh, Des.
with a straight girl, but to not have it happen because you're just not sexually compatible. And I bet that's really hard because that like, because so many people are outwardly sexual, and like it's I mean, there's tons of asexual people out there, and it's way more than people think, but because it's a thing that people don't talk about, people might not even know that a person that they're attracted to is asexual, and they've just dismissed the relationship off the top of their head because it's
Mm-hmm.
like just out the gate, because they're like, we're never going to be compatible in this way because I assume that this person is sexual and I am not sexual.
Yeah.
Like, that's gotta be so hard.
But it's the default, right?
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
default writings that people set out to face in the world. And it's like, I think that's why for so long, like my understanding of my sexuality and attraction to women was so delayed as well. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was just, I mean, obviously, homosexuality was really not hip in the pre any time. Still fighting that fight. But it's one
I
of
don't
those
know.
things.
Being gay
You
is
don't
pretty
think
cool
so?
nowadays.
Oh, it's
Being gay is
fine.
pretty cool.
Oh, okay. I
Like
like
where
to
I'm
think
at.
it was so within
I
our
mean,
realm here.
have you seen this notch I cut in my eyebrow?
That's
Fuck.
you are very TikTok right now.
I'm very gay. I'm
Yeah.
signaling.
Very
I'm
TikTok.
I'm signaling to the ladies.
Right. It's just, but that's the thing though, right? It's such an interesting condition of existence that not a lot of people think about, because
Yeah.
I would say, and again, this is a feeling of it in terms of just how many people are willing to talk about stuff. Being demisexual, asexual, more on the non-sexual side of the spectrum is probably not the majority of humans. Like,
Oh no.
right? Like, so it's definitely a minority within something. And then that
Mm-hmm.
just, again, you add to that feeling of not default, not capable of matching the assumption
Mm-hmm.
when trying to make this connection that we've just talked about tonight is so essential for us to function as people.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's why I have some of the most important friendships in my life, and I've developed them that way, because it's just a lot easier to create really good platonic relationships when there's not the requirement to perform that way. And um yeah, it's really quite something. Sorry, we're getting comments here now. I'm very
Yeah.
distracted.
I really
I
want to
see
highlight.
Serena has jumped in. Hi, Serena. Serena is actually the one who suggested we talk about asexuality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just want to highlight Serena's comment here. sex is like a nice scalp massage. I will say that like a good scalp massage is something I'm still seeking out. So if anybody has like an idea where, and not like as a euphemism, literally a nice
Really
scalp
good.
massage.
Yeah.
Joe, for your birthday, I'm gonna get you one of those like spider-looking things that you can just like.
Oh, I have one of those.
I'm gonna get you a cool one.
But
I'm gonna get you for your
it's
birthday.
not the same. It's not the same as a person doing it.
Well, yeah.
Joe
So-
wants the
So when I go
lady
get a
hands
massage and my
to
massage therapist
massage
does do
the
like neck
scalp.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's sort of the best part about the massage. Anyways, I don't mean to like diminish because you're making a point about like just like.
But that's
sex
real.
doesn't
It's like
have to be-
for some people, it's like this is a nice feeling, but it's
Yeah.
not like the end all be all of like I don't act. You know, you're not paying someone to give you a scalp massage.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I just want to like
feel that with the sex metaphor, it's like some people feel like sex is so important that they need to, if they're not getting it, pay someone to get it.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I'd like, yeah, I mean, I do want to like knock sex off the pedestal of like pleasure hierarchy. And I know we kind of hinted at this earlier about like talking about pleasure, but I mean, a good hot shower with the right sort of like conditions, like in terms of like internal body temperature, external body temperature, the temperature of the water, if you get it right, it's as good as sex, maybe even better. I mean, in the right moment. So this idea that sex is the pinnacle of pleasure, it's something that we do need to challenge, because there's a lot of shit out there that feels really fucking good. Q-tip in the ear. Q-tip in the ear. Like,
No, don't do that. You're gonna hurt your
Feels
eardrum.
so
you
good.
don't put it in the ear canal. You put it in like the outer part of the ear.
Yeah.
And also, there's drugs.
Oh my god, Des!
It's an after dark podcast, Kara. We're okay.
I know.
We were talking about things that feel better than sex.
Yeah,
Sometimes
okay.
it's drugs.
Yeah.
Don't do drugs. Don't
Yeah.
Or if you do responsibly,
do your
please.
substances.
do your
Substances.
substances
Use your
responsibly.
substances responsibly, whatever they are.
Boy.
Well, I do want to get caught up on some comments here. How about talking about sexual interest, not actively seeking or rejecting? Just figured, hey, I'm just not going to worry about it. It'll happen naturally. And then talking about like years later didn't happen, just shrug. Again, so it doesn't have to be something that like is this all encompassing. And I think that's something that society again tries to push, is that it's this defining aspect of human experience, right?
Mhm.
You have to have sex. Frequency doesn't matter so much. You have to have at least had it to be a whole being. And that's something that again is total bullshit. Like if you don't want to, don't like, but this idea, and Carrie, you were speaking about it, this idea that if you don't have it, you're broken, is something that needs to be challenged. And again, I think that's something that a lot of, in terms of like as a quirky loner, that is something we want to challenge too. Again, not that it's the same as being aromantic or asexual, but that is something that like a quirky loner does want to challenge, is that this idea that coupling is this be all and end all of the human experience, you know.
I don't know if this is the podcast with which to dive into it, but I would like to dive into this quirky alone thing because it seems like the woke version of being an incel.
Oh my god!
Sorry.
There's no way to describe it.
Okay, well, obviously we have to talk about this, like not tonight, but like in its.
When you talk about incel philosophy, it's all about the denial of coupling.
See, for the record, and just as a quirky loner, I feel I need to defend and distance myself from that concept. So incels are entrenched in this entitlement to sex, and
It's like the opposite.
Yeah, and they feel
That's
that
what I was
they are
saying.
being actively denied something they are entitled to. And so as a rebellion, they have chosen to be involuntary celibate and take that on as identity. Quirky alone, on the other hand,
Women don't deserve this dick.
yeah, basically. Yeah.
That's what they think.
I'm 100% because I need a new text ring of ringtone. I'm 100% gonna get that later. Women don't deserve this dick, and that's
Yeah.
gonna be my ringtone. Thank you,
There you
Kara.
go.
We're just waiting for Kara to give us sound bites, pretty much.
I only embarrass
And
myself on the internet.
I want to clarify my statement a little bit because it might have come off wrong. But in the sort of rejection of societal norms sort of way, in which they have totally rejected the idea of like men having sex, like there are men who choose to be sexless. They are like, even though they are involuntary, like just because of their personalities, like they make that seem like a choice in which that they have chosen because they are rejecting some sort of societal norm, even though, you know, they raised better. They would probably just be having sex. Like if they had the social ability or like whatever the confidence or whatever thing that they're missing in their personalities that has made them undesirable. Like if they didn't have that thing, they would probably be having sex. But as sort of a personality statement, they have decided to reject anything regarding that sexual culture as a thing that is genuine.
Yeah.
Well, just to point
That
out,
was my
though,
clarification.
there we go. No, but it's interesting how you know, thinking about those parallels a little bit is how the divergence is so extreme, though, right?
Yeah.
You know, when we're talking about, you know, how LeBaron's saying, you know, it's just something I never really thought about. You kind of shrug and you just go like, yeah, I'm just gonna go on my day, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, that's a very like I feel that 100%. You know, when I was younger, I was very hounded quite a bit as and not necessarily caring about it, but being constantly pestered, be like, have you? Who are you interested in? Who do you find sexy? Who's sexy? Who's sexy? And instead of, you know, navigating a way to being like, please don't ask me that. I don't need to answer that question, and I don't have feelings about that. How simple communication is when it's not having someone, you know, in your face about it. But it's a neutral state of being. Like I'm not angry. I don't feel bitter about not having sexual partners. I don't feel I am missing out on something. I don't feel like I am incapable of stuff. Like that's not the state of being with my, you know, demisexuality component of my life. Whereas with like incels and stuff like that, it's rage. It's so ingrained on an emotional state that it turns into this like self-repression of things.
Yeah. Well,
right?
and again, I really think it's important to stress that it's based entirely in a sense of entitlement to sex.
Yes.
Right? It's so deeply ingrained from their perspective that like it is owed to them. And if they are not getting what they're owed, it's a slight. It is a wound, right? And to cope with that wound, like Des was saying, they then morph it into this thing. It's like, well, if I'm not getting what I'm owed, I'm not going to pursue it and use
then
that.
The whole system is broken.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing's a farce.
Yeah. And then like as if that's something that they're contributing to society, right? That like, yeah, like Carrie's quote, you know, women don't deserve that dick, whatever, right?
Women don't deserve my dick.
Yeah. So we're gonna
I will
put that.
clarify: all women deserve my dick.
Okay, this is the thing that and this is just a fun thing. Like I'm not dissing Des at all at this. This was my reaction the whole 4 years. Okay? There'd be conversations like this all the time, and I'm just sitting at the table with my hands like this. Like this is an embarrassment. I'm just like, I have nothing to add to this conversation. It was super fucking funny, and I just like don't know how to respond or add to this in any way. But
again,
I make jokes and sometimes I make weird observations. Sorry.
Well, and just to like maybe we do need an episode on this, and but I do want to sort of like advocate and throw that out there, and not because of the illusion to incel stuff like that, but I do think it is important to kind of like talk about like what Quirky Loan is trying or like wanting to represent. And to be perfectly clear, like a lot of Quirky Loan folks do think of themselves as like actually hyper romantic. There's just this idea or this desire to not and again, people are welcome to kind of call me on how this is received or whatever, but there's this desire to not want to compromise or water down your ideals in terms of like the relationships that you want, right? um, to appease societal pressures, right? So this idea that like you should be coupled, right, is something that exists in our world. And for a lot of Quirky Lone folks, there's this thought or feeling that to adhere to the social standard, I actually have to water down my desire, my ideals, and what I am pursuing, um, and just go on random dates until I find somebody who meets 65% of my criteria. Then we'll get married and have kids and do all the things, right? Um, for Quirky Lone people, like it's just like I can't do that. I'm not going to compromise this percentage of what I'm looking for in a relationship to date somebody. And if I die alone, I die alone, right?
Yeah. Well,
It's
everybody does one.
well, yeah, everyone does low, but the idea that you don't couple, right? Um,
I identify a lot with this, even though I am currently coupled. I
Yeah.
identify a lot with this because I like, and I've even talked to my girlfriend about this. Is like the reason I feel like I'm a good partner is because I'm not afraid of being alone.
mm-hmm,
So if there's an issue, I'm going to talk about it. If there's a thing that I want to go do that I think will make my life happier, then I'm going to consider my partner in that thing if that involves them. But I'm not going to stunt my own growth to help my partner or to appease my partner. Like I'm going to do what's best for me because like being secure in myself and being happy makes me a good partner.
Yeah.
And like, but I'm not afraid to be alone because if it didn't work out and I wasn't happy, and I'm not going to make myself suffer, and then be a bad partner.
Yeah.
Just to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
Like that's not a thing that I consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
oh, go ahead.
well, there's this societal perception that being alone is the worst condition possible, right? Romantically speaking.
Yeah.
Because society doesn't give a shit about friends, right? Society's only concerned with that romantic coupling, and monogamous romantic coupling, right? Because like when we think about this is just amusing earlier because we were talking about like having that conversation with a potential partner on like whether or not you're sexual or not. Polyamory solves a lot of the problems because like, hey, we can have a romantic connection without any sexuality, and then I can have another partner who I do have that sexual connection with, right? So polyamory solves a lot of problems. Just saying, not pushing an ideology or anything. I am a little, but I just think that there's space for conversations around this, right? Where it's like the idea that monogamy is this like be all and end all. It works for folks, and that's fantastic. But it's pedestaled. It's the default, and we need to do away with that.
Well, it's interesting you say that though, Joe, because it was that I think I've talked about this before on the podcast, but I'm not quite sure. But before, as I was kind of really cementing down my sexuality, and I was thinking about, this one woman who authentically piqued my interest after just many years, and she was a really good friend. And you sit there and you go, without like inadvertently, I didn't even know I had the words for this. Like I never heard polyamory before, and I hadn't, 4 years after the fact that I talked about this, but I told Joe this because I think we were living together at the time.
Yeah, we were. I remember the conversation.
And I was just like, you know what? I would just love to marry her, and she can go fuck any dude that she wants. Like that's how it wasn't as blunt as that, but it was down the path of understanding of, I feel so much for this person, even though I know that she never will or has the capacity to do that. It's more along the lines of, I felt so inspired to feel a connection with someone who then could look at me and be like, you know what, this, I understand that there's a piece about you that we may not be compatible on, but we can still be together. And that was the real source with understanding, is like demystifying the stigma around asexuality or demisexuality, and that like it doesn't have to be a core component of a relationship. That's what's the word? Be all end all thing about a relationship.
Pinnacle?
Requirement?
A requirement or like deal breaker kind of esque thing.
Sure.
Where I think a lot of people, they enter that and they're just like, well, if you and I can't do the smushy smush together and be good at it, this is not going to work out. I was going to say snoo snoo at one point, and then
I don't think smushy smush improved on that.
I think if anybody ever, like, if I ever had a potential sexual partner call it smushy smush, I think I would send them home.
No, because I was thinking of, I realized I said the wrong words when I was trying to make a Futurama joke. So yeah. Anyway, retract. But it is quite interesting how I wish that people would give a little more exploration with people, to have the like conversations and seeing what relationship dynamics can look like, and give space for exploration around that. It's probably one of my biggest self criticisms, or kind of things that I'm really self-conscious about, is just the reality that for me to get into a relationship, it would take a very, very long time. And for most people, that's complicated to an extent that they just don't want to invest in something like that. And it's one of the, like, I fully admit, it's like one of the biggest confidence destroyers out there, is because that you can't walk up to someone and be like, hey, so we need to have like 6 months of coffee dates for my brain to like comprehend and figure you out and see if it like likes you. And then if we consider dating, then it's a whole thing. Like we're gonna go, Xandra, where is my form? I need my form.
Kara, we're gonna make you a jot form. We're gonna make you an application.
Yes, please. So
for those that don't, it's come up multiple times in the 8 episodes that we've done, where Kara is in need of a fully notarized document for potential romantic and or sexual partners.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. And again, we require a certified notary for it.
It must be filled out in triplicate to show you really care.
Tahoma must be in that font, otherwise not accepted. Immediately shredded.
Well, that's up to whoever makes the form. Like,
okay, I guess that is Xandra. It better be in Tomaha. It's one of my favorite. One of my favorite fonts.
Font size, Kara? Font size? 12, 11?
10, 11.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna store that information for later and use it somehow.
This is not to say that there can't be a section of the form that says what their preference of favorite font is. That can be a section too, and
this is also why Kara is very hard to date, because if you have the wrong font choices, it's over. Deal breaker.
That's a deal breaker. Yeah.
Please understand, this is sarcasm. Oh my god. Hiking is a good one. Like, here, let me put my dating profile out right now. If you can hike, we're good. Let's go.
It's just hiking.
I mean,
And a couple of
collective-
font things, and
Yeah,
a
yeah,
couple of
I don't know.
formatting things, and a
It's-
few.
Yeah.
It's complicated. I've never
interpersonal
had to think
hobbies.
about this. Like, this is the other thing about it
This-
too. Is
I want this to be like a thing that we either do on 2NPC or on this podcast where we make you a dating profile.
oh please God no. That's like
Oh my
honestly
God.
so anxiety riddled.
But we'd be making it for you.
Sure, but who's gonna have to manage it? Like,
No, I just make it. We didn't have to activate it.
oh,
That's
okay.
That's
okay.
a fun friendship activity is
Okay.
making somebody else's dating profile, because it's sort of like a nice fun lens of like, what do I think is cool to highlight about you? And like,
Mhm.
Oh man, I'm gonna be so self-critical, but that does sound very entertaining.
So
Yeah.
we got some format questions here, Kara. Helvetica, is that a mood killer?
is that a mood killer? Is that a turn off?
I mean, here's the thing. I have to use that font all the time for work, so I'm very much associating Helvetica with,
So
with
it would
work.
be. Oh, it's a mood killer then. Right?
It's. I mean, it would be more like I have to shift my mindset. You know.
Yeah.
Mm.
You're in business mode then, and that's not
I'm
really
in
like,
business
conducive.
mode. Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
like, why are you coming to me with your problems?
Well, what about Xander's essay section for perspectives on Xena?
Oh yes, essential.
Okay.
Please,
Okay.
please, and thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely some Star Trek questions in there.
Oh, yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Mass Effect
we're
stuff?
also we're
Mass
also
Effect.
outing Kara for having a typography fetish.
I mean, I'm not a graphic designer. Every graphic designer out there, if you want to make something for them that's real special, you do fonts. I'll tell you that right now.
That's why I don't date graphic designers, because
There you go.
I'll just say for myself too, I have zero graphic design insight whatsoever, so people could write their dating profiles in Comic Sans and I wouldn't care. I'm more interested
Wow.
in the substance of the profile rather than the font or format. So
Well, that's fine, Joe. I just
Anyway,
like a
to
little
go
bit
back-
of control.
Anyway, to go back to our topic. Sorry, I just read.
Put that on the form. Small font at the very, very bottom, Sandra. Kara needs a little bit of control. Thank you. Continue.
I just want to, I don't know, Des, were you going to Serena's comment here?
Yes,
Yep.
Serena's
Okay.
comment, because it's actually a really good. That brings up something that I wanted to talk about.
I'm going to see if it
Not-
highlights properly. Oh, it does, sort of.
Most of it. Experience most difficulty dating this year's Ace. So far, it's always ended badly. Either I break it off because I don't like him, or the person I liked it broke it off with me because we were sexually compatible. I was willing, but not really craving sex. So in some of the because I did do a little bit of research. Some of the research that I was looking at was the sort of, because I guess in your head, it like when you think about asexuality, it's like that person does not have sex ever. It's like there's no sexual contact.
Mm-hmm.
They never have it. They're repulsed by it. It's not a thing. It's like the equivalent of someone who is very, very lesbian, like never having sex with a man. It's like that's whatever. That's that. So, but the fact that asexual, I guess it because I guess I hadn't really super thought about it. Like I have ace friends, but it's not because sex is not an interest to them. It's not a thing that I bring up and talk to them because it's not it's just they have no context, no experience. Like people who are ace in my experience don't super talk about being ace because you talk about things that you're interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like if you're interested in sex, you talk about sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I also find that sometimes for people who are not not in tune with their own sexual desire, not comfortable with sexuality, or who are asexual, sometimes are intimidated or uncomfortable talking to sex workers because it is a topic that comes up so often. Because it's just our work. It's a thing. But one of the things in that was the difference between like sex repulsed and sex indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
what I called it is like, so it's like you can kind of just like, you can take it or leave it. It's like there are sex workers that are asexual. It's like I'm sort of indifferent to the act, which sort of makes it easier for me to do my job because I have no emotional hangups when it comes to this thing. Like I have don't no attachment to it. It would be the same if I were a personal trainer. Like it's like I'm doing a performance. Like it's acting. It's not anything I'm attached to. So that sort of in like listening to ace people talk about their experiences and like in that whole spectrum, that was sort of a new thing for me to learn. Was that like there are asexual people who have sex for different reasons. And it doesn't disqualify them from having an asexual identity. Just like, you know, if you're straight and if you're a straight dude and you have sex with a guy, it's like it doesn't make you not straight. If that's how you identify. Like it's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that was very interesting to me to find, because I guess it was just not something I ever really talked to anybody about.
Yeah, and I think that's more about just poking in with seeing people, how they react to different things. And that's just people reading, right? That's developing relationships and growing together on interests and figuring out what people have disinterests in.
Yep.
You know, I was extremely uncomfortable. Ironically, I don't know how I ended up on this documentary, to be fully honest. Like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I did it
because you're a good
cinematographer,
cinematographer, Kara.
You're
a good cinematographer.
Thanks.
Because our director knew you were super chill.
Well, I guess that was the mindset that I had to trust, was like, I was going to be okay to listen and learn and do all these things. But when there were conversations, you know, when we weren't filming and topics of stuff were coming up, like I know that there was a realization that I wasn't going to be very talkative around it. And it wasn't until I started having the capacity and the vocabulary to talk about kind of like the demisexuality that I identify with, and was like, that was I guess that turned into the capacity for people to start paying attention to that and realizing like, I don't have anything to add to this. So continue on your conversation. I'm not trying to kill the conversation. It's just when you have nothing to add, you have nothing to add. Like it's not a bad or a good thing. It's just, that's just what it is.
Oh my gosh. It sort of, that thing happened to me the other day because me and our director went to a dinner. And and I was in Canada, so I was talking to a bunch of Canadians, and it was a bunch of Canadian dudes that I didn't know that were talking, and all of a sudden they started talking about sports, and and it like they went on for I don't know, like 5-ish minutes, and I just sort of stood there and I did this the whole time, and then at some point there was a tiny pause, and I looked over at one of the guys and I said, "Is this hockey?"
Right.
Like, yes, it's hockey.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And that's the thing, like that can be interchangeable.
Like I don't have anything to contribute here, but I'm just gonna nod.
Very good, very good.
Indeed. Yeah. Also, yes, Pippin's here. Everybody say happy birthday to Pippin.
Pip pip pip.
Who's 10?
He's 10 years old. He's getting to be an old boy.
Anyway, he's like, who did you call old? Did you see that? Like the head just went,
There's a glare there. That's mostly due to the fact that you were not petting Pip, right?
Oh yeah, right. I was talking about Pip in that voice, and he was like, "Why aren't you not petting me? You're using the voice."
Indeed.
We're getting sort of to the tail end of it, but I briefly wanted to talk about asexuality and kink. Because some of the limited experience I have with asexuality is high. Thank you.
Sorry, the way you said that, you're like, my only experience with kink is when I'm high.
No. Sorry, it was. That's not what for people who are listening. My cat put his paw very purposefully on my shoulder.
I
so
saw that. Yeah.
I had to greet him, and I was not saying that I was high. No,
Uh,
some of my limited experience with people who identify as asexual is through kink, because kink is not always inherently sexual. Lots of times,
Mhm.
most of the time, it's inherently sexual. You know, people they do the brain math where it's like this plus this equals sex pleasure, and that's fine. But for other people who still find sensation, just overall body sensation, like a pleasurable experience, but maybe not related to sex, because lots of BDSM and lots of kink has no P and V, is no V and V, is no P and P. It's just stuff. It's just sensation. It's, you know, it's having a scalp
Stuff.
massage.
Yeah.
It's just stuff. You know, people can asexual people exist in sex work, and asexual people exist in kink.
Mhm.
And it is an entirely valid way to explore kink through sort of just the lens of sensation and sometimes just like psychology, like when we talk about DS, like dominance and submission, like lots of times those relationships don't really have anything inherently sexual, like
Mhm.
someone who's like really into like submissive high tea service. That's like a thing. Um, like people who my cat is sticking his claws into my shoulder. Thank you, Pippin. It's very distracting. Um,
I am cat. Pay attention to me.
this is my cat.
Shoulder cat.
He's too big to be a shoulder cat. Nobody
Yeah.
has told him. But you know, there are people who find who have a dominant submissive relationship like with another person, but their submissive activity is something like high tea service or boot blacking, like cleaning and prepping someone's boots, or being a service submissive where they make them dinner and like and take care of them in a like in a physical way but not sexual way.
Mhm.
And those things are all very valid explorations of kink and power exchange, but they're not inherently sexual.
Right.
Yeah.
Because sexuality is all about context and is all about intention. It like it like some people in the kinds of porn that we make, because very often everybody is fully clothed during the entire experience, and no genitals are exposed, or no sexual acts are technically being performed,
Mhm.
like when it comes to like what people consider sexual acts, you know, P and V. um, some people wouldn't call that porn, and I actually like sort of around my groups whenever in the outside of the sex work community, when I started approaching people and telling people what I do, they were like, that's not really porn.
Mhm.
Porn is anything you make with the intention to arouse someone.
Yeah.
Whether that's mental arousal, whether that's physical arousal, whether that's like a sensation based thing. It's like if you're making it with the intention to arouse, it is porn.
Mhm.
But I don't know why I got off on that tangent. Um, Asexuality and kink exists.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's not as weird as people think it is.
No.
No.
I remember
Yes.
if people want to, I think it's called Love Not Given Lightly. It's a book about different expressions of sexuality, and there's actually a essay on an individual who gets a lot out of spanking other people. But there's no, in any of the exchanges, there's no sex involved. This particular individual just gets the pleasure from spanking somebody else, right? And there's a whole procedure to it. There's a whole whatever, and it was mind blowing for me to read this, because I think up until that point, I think I did conflate BDSM and kink with sexual acts, and again, there was still from the story, like there was still arousal, right? But it wasn't necessarily sexual arousal in the sense that like I understood it initially, right? So I hear what you're saying, that like there's different ways to explore arousal, and I think that can be separated from sexual arousal. So there still can be, again, that's why I think we started out by saying asexuality is a spectrum, right?
Mhm.
And I think just that speaks to it, that there's different aspects and dynamics and things that we can kind of see. So I definitely hear where you're coming from, for sure.
There's lots of reasons that people have sex, and there's lots of reasons that people don't have sex. And sexual desire is not always the deciding factor on why people do or do not have sex.
Well, yeah. And then also asexual people can also want love and companionship. And
yeah, asexual does not mean aromantic.
Mm-hmm.
And people often conflate the two as well.
Yeah.
Like they think if you're asexual, you're a robot. Like you don't have any emotions. It's like, no, asexual people can still experience love and other emotions, and like, and even want to be cuddled and like you know, good comforting touch, but they just maybe don't want to have sex with you or anyone.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Totally. Well, I mean, again, it's like it's demystifying these perceptions of what the narrative has been spun for us. Oh my god,
Serena, you fucking got me. How fucking dare you?
Well, I was gonna say,
please put that on the screen so that YouTube knows what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, then.
Just wanted to highlight this legendary comment. Yeah.
Serena, if you believe you're a sexy robot, you're a sexy robot.
You're a sexy robot.
And actually, Serena, I did want to also thank you for this. I hope it shows up on the thing. It's like when I was at preteen soccer camp, made fun because when the other girls asked me how far had I gone, I asked where.
Okay.
So
this, Serena, this is what happens to me on a daily on like, no, not that in particular, but think about how many times I say things on the internet and then someone laughs and then it takes me like 25 seconds to catch up to what their intention was about what I said versus what I actually said. Like people will be like, "Oh, sexy joke question." And then I'm just like, I don't know. What?
Well, I don't know. I feel like these days you get the joke a little quicker.
Well, for sure. But like, imagine me 4 years ago.
Yeah, like fully we'd be laughing for 5 minutes and then we would have to explain the joke.
Correct. So,
or the thing you said, or the thing we said.
Yes.
In response to the thing you said.
Iconically, me saying I want to be the best DP in the world was like to this day one of the funniest
have a soundbite
things.
of you saying that.
Yeah.
I just want to DP more.
Yeah. I just want to be. I just love DP. Yeah. We were playing Division 2 at the time, I believe. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I got it from one of the highlight reels, and that was my text notification for a long time.
I just want to DP more. Anyway, but yeah, I feel it, Serena. I get it.
Yeah.
It's just like the sort of like there's a heteronormative lens that you sort of view the world in if you're heteronormative, where it's like straight people say stuff all the time that sort of just doesn't make sense inherently if you're not straight. It's like, you know, I just don't understand these straight people. They're just saying stuff like it's normal and it's not. Because that's not my life experience.
That's not my life.
It's like it's the same thing with asexuality. It's just like the sexual people have viewed it from a certain lens that they consider normal, and they're like, oh, this is a normal thing, so this is a context that you should automatically understand. And then asexual people are like, maybe not. Not as normal as you think.
Even as a non-asexual person, can I just say the sexual script, gender script stuff, I don't get it. I don't understand the investment in the dance, the script adhering to the scripts religiously, right? It's just, I don't know.
Okay. Joe needs some introspection.
I'm just like, why are we so invested?
I just don't get you gender people.
Yeah.
No.
Why are we so invested in, like, if you look masculine, you have to do these things, and if you look femme, you have to do these things, and you can't deviate, otherwise, what? gravity stops working. I don't fucking know.
Today's gender is unknowing.
The greatest life lesson is learning to not give a shit.
Yeah.
That's
Or
the
to just choose when you're giving your shits.
Yeah.
Sure. I think that's fair. Yeah.
But I still
Because-
think we need to burn some things down, you know?
Yeah.
I
And
just like how
Sandra,
I
yes,
turned into like Goblin Kara in this light now.
Yeah, like the lighting changed and you are very dramatic. Now we are equal levels of dramatic.
Yeah.
Because for a second I was the only
you go,
dramatic
Joe.
one with my lighting. Ooh.
We are all
Ooh, this is
That's
dark
too
side
weird.
Joe.
That's too creepy. I'm gonna turn the
It's a
lights
little
here.
creepy. But no, Sandra, I do really believe that people adhere, like, find gender scripts and then they adhere to them and then they fully
Yeah.
believe that's how the world works.
Yeah.
I think that that's a very real thing that's happened, and because it's a real thing that I know me in my personal life I have been criticized for.
Well,
Just not
and
adhering to those gender scripts.
it's so pushed in all our media and so reinforced when you do follow your scripts. Like there's so much social positive reinforcement happening for people following their gender scripts. Like it's overhearing conversations around that this guy has not done this and this, or that this girl has not done this and this, or what have you. Like it's just growing up hearing all that and being, again, not knowing a non-binary demisexual polyamorous person at the time, but like now knowing that, looking back, I'm like, this stuff has never made any sense, and so many people are losing sleep over shit that would just be erased by actually communicating, and yet they adhere to their gender scripts, because it's so ingrained.
Yeah, it's what they know. It's what feels safe. It's known.
Yep.
It's a known quantity of thing, and it's it's hard to break out of that stuff if you have no experience at anything else.
And to be perfectly fair, like for women and femme-identifying folks, there are a lot more social consequences to deviating from your scripts, right? For men, for people like me, masculine presenting folks, yeah, I was ostracized. I am ostracized. I'm kind of the weird one, the outcast or whatever. Not really though, right? People just think I'm mysterious. That's the worst that it really kind of came
You are
down to it.
mysterious, Joe.
I know.
You're mysterious.
I lean into it when I can.
Not as mysterious as Kara is in this moment, who looks like she's in a David Bowie
Yeah.
music video.
With the purple backlight and the green sort
Yeah,
of highlight.
and
Yeah.
like your little like curly cue of it, like you look like you're in a mysterious music video.
But
Goblin.
again, I do want to like emphasize that again, it's not without social consequence, and the social consequences are gendered. Women and femme identifying folks or femme presenting folks do get it worse when they deviate from their scripts. So that's the thing to take into consideration with some of this stuff too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
TLDR, sex is lit, or it's not. Whatever.
That's gonna be on if you ever have a tombstone. TLDR, sex is lit or not.
No,
whatever.
just sex is lit or not, whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Do you want?
If I had closing out words, I think it would just be if you have an inkling that some of the things we've talked about tonight have in terms of like the lesser of the sexuality lines of things, just sit with it and be okay with it. And I think for the most part, having conversations and talking about it to people is probably one of the more satisfying things to have happen. Obviously that's dependent on who your audience is. Nothing's worse than trying to talk to people and then being constantly told that's not valid. That's garbage.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a lot of us out there. That's, it's not, I know it's a very overused comment, but you're not alone in a lot of the things in this world. And just because it might feel very isolating with experiences, if you have them, just know, yeah, well, there's more of us out here. We just have to have a voice for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In terms of my closing thoughts, I think for me, in terms of sexual desire, whether you have it or not, and this bit, I guess, a bit of a theme for me, but I think I really encourage folks to like be introspective with your sexual desire, there present or not, um, and just try and have a conversation with yourself about what that means to you and explore that a little bit. If you do experience sexual desire, I highly encourage folks to just explore it a little bit and um, you know ask yourself a few questions to like why do I, especially when it comes to like the things that you do find sexually arousing or whatever, like explore that, like what is it about this that I'm interested in, um, why am I drawn to this, have that conversation with yourself because I think it can help you be more grounded in who you are. And just because as a society we're not really encouraged to explore pleasure and explore the things that do give us pleasure, especially from the sexual side of things. Um, so, as an act of resistance, I think it's good to have that conversation with yourself, and being really mindful as to what that involves. And, if that, sexual desire involves the people making sure that, of course, that things are consensual and spelled out and all that kind of stuff, and that there's communication there. But, um, yeah, just really encourage folks to do that self exploration.
And if you want to explore that sexual desire, you can explore it at onlyfans.com.
Nice.
Yep.
Now it's time for the self promo part of the episode.
I was just going to draw up. So we have a Discord where we sort of have conversations about this. So the 3NPC or less than 3NPC. Oh, you got it? Okay. That's our Discord. We do have a channel in there for conversation around this particular show. So if you have thoughts or questions or whatever that linger past this episode or ideas, you can pop in there, drop in there, ask questions, what have you. We also post links to our YouTube videos because we do post these. I don't know, Des, if you have that ready to go, the YouTube channel.
I don't have the YouTube channel ready
Okay.
to go. Also, it's not totally updated. I may have forgotten to update
Yeah,
that.
that's okay. But we do upload these as VOD to YouTube just because we know that folks can't always join us live, and that's fine. That's whatever. We got lots of shit going on in the world, but they do exist there because we do want people to watch stuff, and we do want to watch these and all that. But yeah, in terms of my stuff, I stream. I'm a bit of a sucker for cute anime stuff, and so I play Genshin Impact a lot. I'm playing usually on Saturdays. I might deviate from that, but in that Discord, that's usually where I post my streams. So that's a little of my self promotion. I play Destiny a lot, but I don't stream it so much these days. But yeah, that's a little about me. Des?
Oh yeah. Here's the link to my Twitter. Please be 18 or over to follow me on Twitter. Where I post stuff about porn, or sometimes I just meme, or sometimes I post pictures of my animals. You never know. I will definitely change your algorithm. So sorry about that. It's also my birthday month, so I don't know. Give me stuff.
Yeah, buy presents for Des.
Yeah.
It's their birthday month.
It's my birthday month. I want presents. I don't know. I'm probably gonna get back into Twitch here soon. I kind of have to figure out. Okay. So here's what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to hook up my PS5 to my computer.
I'm so jealous that you have a PS5. I'm just jealous.
I want to play Elden Ring, and I want to be very bad at it because I am very bad at all. I'm very bad at all FromSoft games. So I think it will be very funny to play Elden Ring because I've heard that you could just fuck around. And you don't have to follow like the linear. So that is a possibility in my head. I just have to come up with the energy with which to do so. So keep an eye out. There might be some games happening. If not, sometimes I play games with my friend Captain Gingerbeard or my friend Sierra Lynch. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. I'm so tired.
Kara, self-promotion.
Self-promote. I don't know. We're gonna dive into KOTOR 2 on my personal stream soon here, which is pretty exciting. Lots of chaos to ensue as always when I play. I'm not a good gamer, but I have fun, so that's all that matters on that front.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, I guess I'll just drop my link tree in there if there's any social platforms. I make videos when I can, when I'm not working for other people. But yeah, today was my last day on The Last of Us.
Yay!
I'm free.
Yay.
So it's it's nice to have a little more flexibility in my life, which is great. But yeah, this is welcome to the internet. It's a weird place. Yeah, fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
With us. No, not with us, but like
I would argue that fuck around and find out.
I think you're doing it on purpose now. I think you're doing it on purpose.
No. I was trying to say I read Halibut Barnes' fuck around and find out as in like hang out with us on our streams to
I would argue that fuck around and find out is not sexual. I don't believe that is inherently sexual thing.
And in context of what we were talking about, I feel
sometimes you do fuck around and find out.
See, no, this is the other thing though too. It's just like the more that I've hung out with your group, Des, the more that I get self-conscious about what I say.
No, you shouldn't be self-conscious. No. You
should have just let that slide, Kara. Just be fine with it.
Here's the thing. If you it's the little hands thing. It's that we react because you react. If you had
brain needs to catch up.
If you had just let it pass,
I know.
Nobody would have laughed at all.
Should have. I'll do that in the future. Okay. Cut the stream, Joe. It's time. It's done.
No, I think we need to take our minute. We need to take our minute and then just wallow in the magnificence of what happened. Yeah, fucking around and finding out.
Hey, everybody! Just to let you know, just have a good night, have a good week, and remember, don't forget to fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good night, y'all.